Drip irrigation is the most water-efficient way to irrigate a backyard garden. It applies water slowly at the base of the plant so there is no runoff or water waste. Setting up drip irrigation takes a bit of work at the start of a growing season, but it will give you a thriving garden and save you so much time and money in the long haul, at least if you pay for water like we do. In our opinion, it's worth it 10 times over. In this video, we will show you what brand of irrigation we chose, how we mapped out and set up drip irrigation for our garden, and I'll also share how we are pulse watering with a timer, which is new for us this year. It was a little tricky to figure out a schedule. There is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to irrigation, but we hope that by sharing what we did, you will say to yourself, hey, I can do that too. Summers here in Arkansas tend to come with long, hot, dry spells. After limping along through 6 hot weeks with no rain last year, I decided that laying drip irrigation to all of the garden would be a priority this year. We do have a well on the property, but since it isn't adequate for our water needs in the house, we pay for rural water. However, we plan to use the well for our irrigation system. We think that if we do pulse watering, it will be able to keep up with demand. So, where to buy irrigation? We chose Dripworks because they cater to the little guys too, and I was familiar with the brand since we used it in our Ohio garden. And it's easy to install once you figured out your irrigation map. This was Myron's first time using it, and he was impressed with how easy and efficient the Dripworks system is. So if you'd like to try it out, there's a link to their website in the description, along with a coupon code for your first purchase. They have irrigation kits, but I would recommend buying exactly what you need for your situation, a la carte. Okay, let me interrupt myself for just a second to show you the map of our irrigation. The garden is 2,500 square feet and divided into 4 equal parts. Because we are pulse watering using a timer, we wanted to run water to each section separately. So we purchased a timer with 4 zones and ran mainline tubing from each zone to the separate sections of the garden. That way we can give more or less water to a section depending on the crop requirements or whether or not we have something planted in that section. So here's everything we purchased from Dripworks for our complete custom irrigation system. 3 100-foot rolls of the half-inch polyethylene mainline tubing, which we use to run water to the 4 different sections of our garden. 2 500-foot and 2 100-foot rolls of 1/4-inch soaker drip at 9-inch spacing. You can opt for 6, 9, or 12-inch spacing. This connects to the mainline tubing and irrigates each bed. Most of our beds are 2 foot wide and have 2 lines of soaker drip each, and the beds that are 4 foot wide have 4 lines. 6 of the half-inch EasyLock female hose starts, which connect the mainline tubing to our hydrant or timer. 6 of the half-inch EasyLock end caps to cap off the mainline tubing. 6 of the half-inch EasyLock coupler with valve, so we could have more control within each quarter and turn off the water to an area that may not have anything planted in it. 6 of the half-inch EasyLock elbows to handle any right angles on the mainline tubing. 2 of the half-inch end caps with 1/4-inch barb in case we wanted to run a line of soaker drip off the end of one of the main lines. 1 50-pack and 2 10-packs of transfer barbs to connect the soaker drip to the mainline tubing. 1 100-pack of 1/4-inch one-way goof plugs to cap the ends of the soaker drip and also mend any mistakes in the mainline tubing. 1 100-pack of large wire pins to hold down the mainline tubing. 2 100 packs of smaller 3-inch wire pins to keep the soaker drip line in place. And finally, a miracle punch to punch holes in the mainline for the barbs that connect the soaker drip. And here's a pro tip. The tubing is much easier to pierce if you allow it to warm up in the sun for a few hours. So how much did all this cost? After using a coupon, we spent a little over $300 on the Dripworks part of this. This figure depends largely on which products you choose, which configuration you use, and how big your garden is. But when we consider that we spent almost $100 on a water bill for just 1 month of watering the garden and yard last year, it was a no-brainer to us to spend this on a system that would help us to use way less water and enable us to utilize our well too. If you want a coupon code, we've got one for you in the description. All right, setting it up. First, you want to run your mainline tubing and add the hose coupling where it will attach to the timer. We recommend to flush out the mainline tubing and soaker drip line before capping the ends to get rid of any dirt that gets inside during installation. But once that's done, you will need end caps for each mainline. Next, pin down the mainline with U-shaped pins. When you have all that in place, use a punch to make 1/4-inch hole in the mainline tubing where you will attach the soaker drip line. We used a tape measure to space this evenly in each bed. Next, insert a 1/4-inch transfer barb into each soaker drip line, then into the mainline tubing. Secure the drip lines in the bed with 3-inch wire pins. It's good to note that the maximum length for drip line is 25 feet. These beds are all 22.5 feet long, so we're good on that. But I think it might lose its water pressure if you run a line over 25 feet long. After flushing out the soaker drip line, plug the ends with a goof plug. And you want to make sure that you plug all the ends of the main line and the soaker drip line because you can lose a lot of water in a hurry that way. In our Ohio garden, we had one end of some irrigation somewhere that kept blowing off, and we would run the well dry and come out and half the garden would be flooded. So you want to make sure that the ends are capped. If you want to add a valve in the main line to have even more control over what gets water and what doesn't, cut the tubing, insert the valve, and then tighten the easy lock. It's fairly straightforward, but it does take a bit of pressure and oomph to get these easy locks in place. Alright, so what exactly is pulse watering? It's a method of irrigation that some orchards and berry farmers have used for years to deliver multiple shallow waterings to their crops throughout the day. The idea is that it keeps the water and nutrients right at root level where they are needed and reduces drought stress on the plants and trees. A plant that is not stressed for water will grow much better and produce more consistently. Pulse watering is a great way to accomplish that even, consistent moisture. So to set up pulse watering, you will need a timer and a pressure regulator. We purchased this timer on Amazon and absolutely love it, so I'll link it in the description too. Because we wanted to set up 4 separate zones in our garden, we got a 4-zone timer. But if you only have 2 zones, just get one that has 2. So the soaker drip line we use has 9-inch spacing, and the Dripworks website says it puts out about 0.8 gallons per hour per emitter at 30 psi, which is what our regulator is set to. I know, it's confusing. My initial plan was to water each section for 45 minutes every 3 hours, 4 times a day. That's what I found other flower farmers did when I Googled it. But this is a case in point for how you can't copy and paste someone else's irrigation methods onto your own garden. That was way too much water. I had a hard time computing the flow rate and PSI mumbo jumbo, so I just used a bucket to collect just one dripper for one 45-minute cycle. Now, it doesn't look like those little drippers are putting much water out, but they do. One dripper gave 3 cups of water in 45 minutes. That came out to almost 48 gallons of water per 22-foot row per day. If I watered 4 cycles per day, my plants would soon feel like they were floating down the White River. Nonsense. And we also have leaf mulch down, which retains moisture very well. So my current plan is to water for 15 minutes twice a day and bump it up as needed. I probably will need to bump it up when it gets hot this summer. There will be areas like the dahlias that require more, but I can just schedule more cycles or more water per cycle for them on the timer. Rosita says that if you want a drought-free year, lay down some irrigation. But drought or no drought, we're ready for you, 2023. Now, if I can just figure out what's eating my onions.
Putting this valve in here.
Start over.
We're bossy.
We were talking before I turned it on.
Make a good catch if you're on video.
Said I didn't have enough. I got plenty.